Welcome. Yo, we are live. This is On the Chain. I'm Jeff. We're here on the HODL review. We are going to discuss crypto regulation. I don't know what else goes in with crypto regulations. There is so many things to go into when it comes to regulatory clarity, when it comes to this space. What is the government up to? What should we know about as we move forward going into 2020, as we move forward going into 2021? I don't know, but we're going to find out right now. That's some good stuff. I highly recommend that you grab your favorite morning beverage today. Coffee of today, I'm drinking Black Rifle. It's actually the BB version, or the Beyond Black. The Black Rifle, they have an assortment of different coffees if you like them. This is the dark roast, great espresso. Put it on the stovetop espresso maker. It is absolutely outstanding. I highly recommend it, and we'll see what we drink next week. Throw any comments down below if you guys are drinking your espresso, which one you prefer, and we'll get into it. So today we are going to talk about crypto regulation. There is so much going on in the space when it comes to regulatory clarity, and it seems to just go by with not a lot of fanfare. And so we're going to give it a little bit of a fanfare. The question that we have to come up with today is whether or not we think it's going to happen in 2020 or it's going to happen in 2021. And so there's going to be, it's going to be interesting as we go through it, but we're going to follow the path. As we like to do on these videos, we like to kind of create this opening, and we're going to create the narrative, and then we're going to complete the narrative at the end with some sort of an understanding. So we're hoping that that's going to happen today. We've got Tony Morissette on, Rod Hop, and number one that hit the HODL review this morning is none other than Chip, co-host of On the Chain. So let's see here. People are going to start, coming in as we go. It's always great to create our narrative and let people kind of follow us through. But the first thing I want to start off. What is up, Sir John? Man, it was great having you on the show the other night. We did a impromptu. That's DNI terminology, but an impromptu live stream on Thursday. Chip and I. And it was good. It was crypto and whiskey. Today should be like crypto and coffee, or crypto and espresso, however you want to phrase that. But here's the place I want to start. We want to look back, and we talked about it already. I dropped a video on Thursday morning, and I talked about crypto regulation. Thursday evening, Chip and I went into the RTGS, and we were looking at the real-time settlement, and what some of the other proposals are out there that people are working on. Are we afraid of competition coming into the space? Is Swift afraid of competition? But what I wanted to highlight here today, and we want to really get into it a little bit more, is really going back over regulation, regulatory clarity, because without regulation, we really have, the same that we've always had. And so that's what we want to get a better understanding of. How do we get into some regulatory clarity? We know there's some regulatory clarity and regulatory discussions that are taking place all over the world. And we also have seen what's going on over in China. I gotta put the China plug in. We're going to talk a little bit about China towards the end. But China's been steamrolling ahead with their digital currency, their digital yuan, while seemingly the rest of the world, or at least the rest in the U.S., has been taking a back seat to this discussion. Hey, you like my see-through shirt today? Look at, you can see right through my body. How cool is that? Look at that. You can see right through me. Check that out. Let's see if you guys can figure out without seeing what's written at the bottom. I don't know if you can see the image completely, but let's see if you guys can figure out what this logo is. Oh, I kind of gave it away. But if you guys can figure it out, let me know what your thoughts are, what you think. I'll have to show you the back of the shirt. I'm not sure if I could get the back of the shirt. That might give it away as well. So good stuff here. All right, we got David D popping in, Robert Dish. Appreciate to have you here as well, David D. Early morning discussion on regulatory matters. The mark, U.S. is full of fecal matter with regulations. David D. got it right away. Boom. Cobra Kai. There you go. Nice. Now let's see how many people remember what Cobra Kai is. That's the question. All right. So here we go. Mike, appreciate this comment here because Alex Mashinsky of Celsius, he's the CEO of Celsius. He stated in his Friday live chat with the recent OCC decision, he said it was huge and would be looked back on as the pivot point for crypto legitimacy. I think there's definitely it's definitely something to that. Alex definitely knows his stuff, and when we saw, the OCC decision on allowing banks to custody a digital asset, that was definitely kind of that awakening moment, moving things forward. And so now, as we're starting to see, this movement of, of the banking system, because really the banking system is going to be very instrumental in the entire process. So, oh, that's awesome, Chip. You just started watching it. Nice. I thought it was pretty. Overall, I think it's pretty good. You get through both seasons. It was actually pretty cool. So so it's got to start with the banks. We got to get some normalcy. We got to get mainstream on board with cryptocurrency for it to go anywhere. And if it was going to die a fast death, it would have died already. If it was going to die a slow death, then we would have seen more obstacles and more confrontation globally from the government saying, we're not into this. We're not going to allow this to happen. The OCC guy is the most important person to date for crypto in America. I think that, that there's a lot to be said for that, because a lot of the others kind of they've sat back to kind of taking a back seat to it, or they're just not as outspoken, or they're just not as well known because they haven't had the same impact. But if you take like a Warren Davidson or a Darren Soto, both congressional representatives, one in Ohio, one in Florida, both of them co-sponsors of the Token Taxonomy Act, both in both sessions of Congress. And so, each time it was introduced, there was a little bit of fervor behind it and excitement and hopes that this was going to be the time that they were going to actually bring the token taxonomy forward. Now, the Token Taxonomy Act was fairly bold because they were, looking to amend the Securities Acts of was that like 19? I always forget the date on this one. I have to look it up. It's like 1932. There was a series of amendments. The last time it was amended, it was like the IRS amendment, the Internal Revenue Service amendment back in like 1980. I think was the last time it was amended. And so we're working in kind of a historic from a historic perspective, economically speaking, we're working in history. So if you haven't had the amendments to be updated with the change in technology, then we're operating a little bit, from behind instead of leading from the front. And so, the other aspect of everything is when you look at the Howey test, and so it was the Howey test, right? Why does that sound funny to me right now? So let me see if that was it. Why does that sound funny to me all of a sudden? Yeah, no, that's it. So, so the it's just so funny. But the Howey test, this was from 1946, and this had to do with a court case that was the SEC against an individual, Howey, that owned orange groves and was actually piecing out parcels of his orange grove, and getting people to invest in his orange grove. And then his promise was that when he harvested the oranges and sold the oranges, that they would all get a piece of the action. And so that then moved forward to the SEC saying that you're actually selling securities, and you didn't properly go through a proper registration of that. And that's how this whole Howey test came to be, was based on that one court case from 1946 over an orange grove. And so now from that point forward, from 1946 forward, so what are we looking at? In terms of years, 74 years forwards. They're using the same exact test and applying the securities tests over and over and over again. So I guess from a court case and the very bare bones minimal criteria of understanding of how to look at securities, then I guess that's a good case to use because it's very, very easy to understand. However, so there always has to be a however involved in this, because A, it's legal. B, it has to do with financials. You can't oversimplify, even though you want to use an easy test. But shouldn't we move forward and start looking at how technology has adjusted and changed, especially when it comes to the digital space and the digital representation of your share ownership, or whatever it might be, the representation in a currency. I mean, the list goes on and on, but can we still utilize a test from 74, 75 years ago and apply it to modern day? And I think that's the big concern. And that's also when we looked at the Token Taxonomy Act, some of the things they wanted to change and adjust was really to allow for this space to grow and give it breathing room, instead of it being stifled. So Chip brought up, I had asked Brian Brooks the other day if there would be an update on the Securities Act of 1933, and that's at 1930. So that's really poignant, because this is exactly what was in the Token Taxonomy Act. And so again, the Token Taxonomy Act was really bold, and obviously, unfortunately, there's some there's some issue, when it comes to trying to amend something that's financial, when you still have, politics involved in it. So there could be additional motivation to not create a regulatory framework right now in the current political situation that we find ourselves in, which is very contentious. And so, there's those within government that would prefer to see our economy suffer, and would rather see people suffer economically in order for them to gain more political points, versus allowing people to finally get some, a little bit of clarity, or again, a little bit of space to develop and build their own financial resource. So here's, when we're starting to see some adjustment, this is why this regulatory conversation is so critical. One of the things that we see in a lot of these investment vehicles is that, first and foremost, you need to be an accredited investor in order to even dabble in the IPO space. And so that's why they're trying to adhere the ICO space, which was the initial coin offering, to the IPO space. And for the most part, as a regular investor, you're not investing in IPOs at the right time. So let's say there was a big conversation. I forget, there's a list of IPOs that are getting ready to launch. And if you look back to even when, let's say Tesla launched in their IPO, or Twitter launched their IPO, or Facebook launched their IPO, or any company, those are companies that everybody knows. when it hits the mainstream retail investment, you've already missed the boat on the IPO because you needed to get in ahead of time as an accredited investor to give you the opportunity to invest in higher risk investment opportunity. And there's a lot of criteria that you have to make. You can look it up. I think one of them is that you have to have a net value of $1 million, before you can even think about becoming an accredited investor. And then there's some minimal criteria even in that investment. So those are some of the things that needed to be adjusted slightly. And so as we're looking at the digital asset space, the crypto space, this is what gives us an opportunity, gives everybody an opportunity to invest in themselves. And for the most part, and I've said this so many times over and over and over again, and this transcends politics. So regardless of what side of the political fence you find yourself on, hopefully from an economic perspective, you find yourself on the self-reliant side. Because if you're investing in digital asset and cryptocurrency, and you find yourself on the side of big government and socialism, then the two don't really mesh. They don't, and so it doesn't really make sense that from an economic perspective, you're trying to create self-reliance, well, whereas on the political side, you're trying to create government reliance. The two are in direct opposition of one another. It doesn't really make sense. So what we want to look at just purely from an economic perspective, we need to put everything within perspective. And so some of the things that are happening at the government level with regulation are definitely interfering with or impacting our ability to build our own financial wealth as a an everyday individual, not someone that has millions and millions of dollars to invest in the space. So we have to look at the middle class. What are the opportunities for most people to invest? What is people that are maybe struggling, they're living paycheck to paycheck. What is the opportunity out there for them to take a little bit of that money that they're making, and instead of spending it on stupid things, invest it in something and watch their money grow? Because even if you're able to put $100 a week aside, and I get it, sometimes everyone is living dollar to dollar to dollar. However, many times also people are in a situation where they're living paycheck to paycheck. However, they're still running out and buying the new iPhone, or they're running out and buying the new big screen TV. How about if you forego that and take that same $1,000 and invest it in something for your future? So, or individuals that you see them all the time, people sitting in Starbucks and they're spending their $5 a day on a Starbucks coffee. How about taking that same $5 a day and investing it? Now, up until this point, and I'm going to get to the comments here in a minute, but up until this point, as an individual, what are you going to do with $5? Where are you going to invest it? You're not going to invest it in stocks. There was at one point a fractional share purchasing platform, went away. Now I know there's some opportunities to do it again. There's some entities that are offering it. But overall, as an individual, they don't have the exposure to an investment vehicle. Many people don't understand, or haven't taken the time, or haven't, whatever it might be, they're not educated enough in the stock space. Most people get into stocks and they try to buy and sell, and they follow the mainstream retail, and they end up buying high and selling low. And it's this vicious cycle. And so we got to take, people away from the vicious cycle and go more into, some long-term opportunities of investing and holding. So, you brought up Celsius, and it's really interesting because there were a couple questions that had been asked. One question, this came back for a few videos ago. Someone asked me a question to say, hey, can you get Alex Mashinsky on your show and ask him a question about having a Visa card, etc., and kind of went into that. So I had sent Alex an email, and I said, and asked him, I said, look, from one of our followers, subscribers, had a question regarding Visa. And if you look at the Celsius platform, the entire concept of it, and this is what Alex, his response was, is that he's looking for helping people to invest long term. They believe in hodling. They don't believe in spending. So his objective is, can you eventually spend your money? But he's a savings platform. So a savings and gaining platform. So if you can take your digital asset and you can put it on their platform and you can earn an interest every single month, every single year, that is your long-term savings. It's not, put it in there and then get a Visa card and start spending it. Those are other platforms. So there's something to say about both sides of it. Is at some point you have your gains and you want to spend it, but he doesn't want to oversimplify the process of getting people to spend. But that's the vicious cycle in society, with all the Visa cards and credit cards that they hand out so readily, especially to college kids. But their objective is to get you hooked on credit, and they want you to be part of the continuous cycle of spending versus saving. And so, how does all of this kind of intertwine? Because within the crypto space, it's the first time in history that, in my history anyways, where it gives individuals, regardless of what country you're in, an opportunity to save in themselves, and to look at, bettering their future. However much they can put in, they have this opportunity to better themselves. And so how is it then that you have individuals within government that don't understand the very nature of the digital asset space, Maxine Waters, and yet they're taking, they're impacting, let's say, people's futures. So they're impacting it because they don't understand enough, or there's individuals within the government space that are butting heads with each other over other things. Yet when it comes to economics, again, we have to get above and beyond that discussion. Here in the United States, we have to get above and beyond this idea of communism and socialism and government can do everything great for you, because we know that government can't do everything great for you. But you only have to look at just, a few, cases, a few scenarios where you realize that you can't let government just do whatever they want to do, because the government is subject to the people. The people are not subject to the government. And that's the misunderstanding when you don't educate our young, properly, where they believe that they cannot have an impact on government through the right methodology. Then they have a complete misunderstanding, and they act out in a vicious cycle. At the same time, those same individuals need to be representative and taking care of themselves before worrying about all the other nonsense. And this is a little bit of a sidetrack, to this conversation, but why is all of this important from the psyche of how we're thinking about this, the psyche of how we're voting, when we go and vote, how do we look at the individuals from a financial perspective, not just based on a political perspective, because that's what mainstream media is telling you to believe, but we have to understand it from a financial perspective, because it's us and it's them at this point, right? And the them is the political elite class that is trying to dictate to us how we're supposed to live our lives and how much economic freedom we're allowed to have. Now, if you go to the Soviet Union, I don't know if there's people here that didn't experience when there was a Soviet Union. Maybe they're too young to remember the fall of the Soviet Union. And now we're seeing, the rise, of other entities within the world. But that constant, conflict and confrontation between the U.S. and the Soviet Union. I don't know how many of you have been to East Germany. Obviously not before the wall came down, but how many people, understand, when the Berlin Wall came down, what was life like on the other side of the Berlin Wall under communism? And then if you go there now and you're in Berlin and you're standing on the spot where the Berlin Wall was, and it's amazing because you go into the square on the other side that was East Berlin at the time, and now, but there's a stark contrast in the architecture of its time. So you see that after World War II, you have the west side built up modern. The east side wasn't. It was block housing, block buildings, everything very bland and plain because it was subject to the government. Whereas on the other side, on the west side, this was allowing people to build their dreams. So it's a perfect place for anyone who believes that they think that socialism and communism can take root and be beneficial. They need just go to Germany, stand in that spot, take a look at the architecture, and then come back and have an interesting conversation about about communism versus freedom. It just doesn't work. It's a complete top down kind of mentality where the political elite live a certain way and then the rest of the populace do not. And it doesn't work that way. Cryptocurrency, through proper regulatory and regulation, will allow the people to actually build and become self-reliant. Cryptocurrency that goes unchecked for longer periods of time allow for the corruption within the system, unfortunately, because either you're going to self-regulate the space, which is very important, and you're starting to see organizations within the space to allow for some semblance of self-regulation, or if we need to get mainstream clarity and we need to have some clarity on how the blockchain space is going to work in mainstream society and in mainstream economics, then you need to have the government create some sort of regulatory clarity based on the structure, based on the system, to allow that to build up. Now, if everybody sat back and said, well, let the government do what they want to do, then they're going to ratchet it down to where you have zero freedom and try to close it down. But this goes back to the whole conversation and why I wanted to bring this up. I don't mean to just keep going on. I know you guys are commenting and whatnot. We'll get to that here in a minute. But it goes straight back to even a year ago, 2 years ago. It goes back to what Warren Davidson is all about. It goes back to what Darren Soto are all about. Now, for you guys here in the U.S. that might not know who they are, or for anyone watching overseas, and I know we have a lot of people internationally that watch, Warren Davidson is a Republican. Darren Soto is a Democrat. Do they see eye to eye on politics? No. Do they see eye to eye when it comes to economics in the digital asset space? 100%. So how is it that you have a Republican and a Democrat came together to co-sponsor one of the more significant bills in the history of this country when it comes to economics? And why is it significant? Obviously, because it's a new digital asset that's taking root in the world. And we need that regulatory clarity. And it's their bold step with the Token Taxonomy Act to say, look, the Securities Act of 1933, et cetera, isn't going to do it anymore. We need to adjust and amend to the modern society. It has to happen. Then, you fast forward and you've had a bipartisan initiative, just not enough, right? So you finally have this awakening. I still see a kind of a conflict in some of those that are, on the left, where they're bringing and supporting, economic freedom, yet they want to take away and kind of ratchet down your freedom on the other side. And maybe that's more in the direction of what's happening here politically right now. But what we got to focus on the fact. Here's an individual like the chairman of the Senate Banking Committee, which I talked about Thursday. We talked about it Thursday evening. And this is Mike CRYTPO. He's a Republican out of Utah, but he took the bold step because from his perspective, he's the one who started talking about and awakening this initiative within the Senate. So we're talking about the Senate Banking Committee, talking about Bitcoin, Ethereum, stable coins, digital dollars, trying to get a better understand of it, exploring it. What does it actually mean? So here's something, out of this one article. It was on Forbes from that period of time. In his opening remarks, CRYTPO explored the long-standing promise of cryptocurrencies to provide faster, cheaper global payments with a degree of anonymity. CRYTPO introduced his colleagues to stablecoins as a new type of cryptocurrency that has emerged aimed at achieving these benefits while marginalizing the volatility of some of its predecessors. Then he goes on, stable coins, which may be issued by a central entity, deliver price stability by having their value pegged to another asset like commercial bank deposits or government issued bonds. So here he is, he's talking about, we have everything else that happened, and obviously we see the volatility in the space, but we want to achieve some normalcy. You need to create some stability in the space where, you have to figure out how do you back it. Now, we don't want stable coins that are backed on legacy. If you're going to have a stable coin, it has to be backed, like he's saying, on another asset. It could be commercial bank deposits. It could be government issued bonds. It could be maybe a basket of digital asset. So, let's say you have, you take a basket of 10 currencies. You do the top 10, or maybe you do Bitcoin, Ethereum, XRP, et cetera. And then your one stable coin is based on that grouping of that basket of assets, which give it the value. And that's the stable coin that you move forward with. So we're not talking about a completely centralized digital currency like what, the discussion is over in China, which is basically just a centralized digital currency without any other checks and balances, no decentralization, 100% controlled, by the government. So, all right, let me go down. Sorry, there were some comments here from a while ago that I wanted to get back to. So David D had said, crypto market is like the hot pot on the stove. When you were a kid, you have to get burned a few times before you learn to respect the fact that you can get wrecked if you're not careful. And that's based on, investment or, whatever it might be. Let's see here. Just to put that up, David D, bipartisanship is severely lacking. It's amazing. In order for bills to pass on a regular basis, there has to be bipartisanship, especially in the Token Taxonomy Act. It has to get through in order to, pass anything like that. You definitely need some clarity there. Here's another comment, goes back to what I was saying. I meant to get to this one, but David D, the number of companies headquarters in West Germany versus East Germany is very telling even today. You have to go back and look at that stark contrast. It's so critical. Most people that I've found that I've had any kind of, discussion with, and we get into depth into that, understanding one way or the other, I find that, many people are just operating off of what they're seeing on the news and have never really traveled. And when I talk about travel, I don't talk about going to, to a resort somewhere in Mexico. I'm talking about traveling and actually working, internationally, and then, trying to absorb what you're learning as you're working internationally and trying to then, piece together ideas and opinions based on the experience, versus just what people are telling you. I think it's really, really important. Let's see. So Cancun is not Mexico. Yeah. So where were we? Okay. So anyhow, so here we have this Mike CRYTPO, that's been really taking a big initiative. Mike CRYTPO's initiative has been, really, really solid. Again, as the chairman of the banking committee in the Senate, for him to bring this discussion to the forefront is telling on the direction that we're moving in. Now, we can start reading into it. We can try to figure it out. Can it happen in 2020? Does it get pushed to 2021? I think right now there's definitely an opportunity to bring some regulatory clarity in the United States as we're starting to see regulation kind of kick in different parts of the world. It gives us a very unique opportunity in the US right now to get more emboldened to really, push for some sort of clarity. And the fact that you're seeing it now in the Senate, and you're getting some key individuals, and I would say that Senator CRYTPO is a key individual as a chairman of the banking committee. Now, what kind of impact can he have on the Financial Services Committee, Maxine Waters and all the rest, they have to open their eyes. They have to wake up. And there are other initiatives that are being pushed also through Congress. So, it's just so vital. And I like how you go back to this open letter that he published on September 1st. One of the opening statements here was the OCC is seeking input on the digital activities of banks and federal savings associations. Then Chairman CRYTPO's letter requests an update on its findings and information regarding the next steps the OCC intends to take with this technology. So we already see what they're doing. So if they've allowed the custody now, and he's saying, okay, what's the next step? What are you guys going to do? Now, from an economic perspective, if we look at what's happening right now, we need a bold act. We need something that is going to spur the economy forward. We need something that's going to say, hey, based on this activity, all of a sudden, we're going to have a big growth in the economic space. We're going to put things, kind of back on growth projections. And so, again, this goes down to how many people, can we, get invested in the digital asset space to help better their lives. And this is, again, going back to that, but this is definitely from a, this is definitely from a global perspective, because it doesn't matter what country you're in. An interesting story. So yesterday I'm having a conversation. There's this individual over in Cameroon, in Africa. So I've been working with this company, and we're trying to help them with certain things. And so he writes me yesterday, he said, you're not going to believe this, but I just got fired from my company. And he said he got fired from his company in Cameroon because in the research of what they were working on and what we were kind of helping them with, he was looking at competitor websites. So they fired him. They said that he can't believe it, but they say they called him a traitor, whatever. And I said, how does stuff like that happen? That happened over in Cameroon, in Africa. Now, I look at it, I said, can you do that? Can you fire somebody because they're on a competitor's website? I wrote him back, said that doesn't make any sense. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, man, this guy, he's, newer in the space, came out of school, he said, about a year ago, 2 years ago. So, but he's understanding the growth in his space. And so I told him, I said, well, they fired you. I said, why don't you start your own business? Why don't you start your own company? You've got the international connections that you need. That's one of the hardest part, is getting the connections for your product. That's number one big obstacle. Number two big obstacle is understanding the dynamics of opening up a company. I said, I don't know your laws over in Cameroon. I don't know how difficult it will be to open up a business. So while we're on WhatsApp texting, did a research, sent him a link. I said, here's your process of opening up a business over in Cameroon. Here's what you have to do. And so, it'll be interesting because we went through stages. So, okay, you set up your business. Whatever regulatory framework you need to open up your business in, you're going to have to get a bank account. You have to fund it, whatever that might be. But the thing is, if you're already known in the space, you have to figure out how to, better yourself, and so there's a scenario where, and I'm thinking in the back of my mind, we're talking about payments and we're trying to figure out, and at that moment, I was thinking, well, if we want to create and streamline your payment process, we need to do this in digital assets. I didn't say it, but I was thinking it. And I said, you know what, this would be amazing. If your guys over in Cameroon, if we want to, kind of create like a streamline of payment structure, why don't you guys just pay us in a digital currency? Buy the digital currency, send it to us, and we'll transfer it over, and I was thinking, I was like, man, this would make life so much easier, because I know in Cameroon, he's going to run into, certain banking issues. And those banking issues are going to make it more difficult for him to transfer money. But those are the hurdles that he's going to have to overcome. But it was just so interesting. So here I am trying to outreach. I'm saying, hey, you got to better your life. You got to do something to build and grow. Horrible that you got to let go. But I told myself maybe it's a blessing in disguise. I don't know, but I do know from, again, that perspective, understanding and knowing people is the hardest part. I've spoken to people all over the world. I mean, and it's amazing to me. I don't care what country you go to. I don't care the people you speak with. Everybody wants the same thing. Everybody. I happened to be at one point where at a conference show, and I was standing in a booth of an Israeli company, and they're selling their product that is needed in the Middle East, and needed all over the world. Doesn't matter where it's needed, but it's needed. There's nothing like it, and there were an influx. It was so impressive to me how many people came from Middle Eastern Arab countries to this pavilion that was an Israeli company, and they were coming in and having conversations from Iran, from Saudi Arabia, from Kuwait, from Egypt, from Lebanon, from all over. I had a meeting with someone. I said, "Hey, meet me over there," and the guys were from Lebanon, and I said, "This is amazing." Here we are. We're standing. This is what peace is all about. And it's economic peace. Forget about all the politics involved, but you achieve economic peace. And one of the guys told me, I can't remember if he was from Lebanon. I think it was from Lebanon. And I said, we're standing here in this Israeli pavilion, and I know that you guys can't import the products. Why do you think there was that critical initiative that just happened with the UAE that just went through? Because Arab countries cannot import anything that says made in Israel, which is ridiculous, especially when they need something. So here you have a product. Then they said, we get it. We love your product. We want to import your product. Or we want to buy your product. When is your made in Spain product going to be available? And at that time, this goes back a number of years, but they had an initiative where they're actually assembling the product over in Spain and marking it made in Spain, so that it was specifically made for the Arab world. Everybody coming knew. They knew 100% that it was made in Israel. They're standing there having conversations. The one guy told me, I said, well, how do you guys overcome this? And he said, look, he took out some money from his pocket, and he said, this is what's important. Everybody here that's standing in this pavilion has a family. Everybody's raising their family. Everybody wants what's best for their family. Everybody wants what's best for their children. We're in business for that purpose. We're not in business to have political conflict and political confrontation, and violent confrontation. We're here to the betterment of everybody. And I said, you know what, that's amazing. And like I said, it was person after person after person. Then you go to the media and you hear a completely different narrative until you get on the ground and you start speaking with people and seeing the people. Then you get a better understanding of the dynamics, of the global dynamics. Now, is that so different even in the United States with all the tension that's going on right now, which is just all fictitious? It's all made up for a specific agenda, right? A specific political agenda. Now, all of these individuals, regardless of where they are, I know I'm kind of sidetracking here, but all these individuals, they want the exact same thing. Everybody, right? They want what's best for their family. They want to do well. They want to succeed. They want an opportunity to have a great job. They want an opportunity to create a business. Except for, unfortunately, there's a lot of people around the world, and it's not unique to one country, that have been brainwashed into this idea that for some reason they have a lesser value to society. They've been in there's some message has been embedded in their brain that that somehow society owes them something, versus them trying to create and being self-sufficient and just blocking out all the noise around them and saying, whatever, what you have your belief over there on that side of the street, and I'm gonna have my belief on this side of the street, and I'm gonna do better. And so now the thing is and it's another interesting story. So a buddy of mine runs a roundtable, a political discussion roundtable. It becomes interesting. So I've participated a few times, and he has people from different backgrounds. And so I participated once, and one of the guys that's on the roundtable, very wealthy, as properties everywhere. The guy looks like he should be a band member in Metallica, tattoos, everything. And yet, here he is. He built it from the ground up. He didn't have anybody help him. He was out there doing whatever he does, day after day after day, grinding to get to the point where he owned all of this stuff. And then he looks, and we're having this political conversation. He goes, I don't care. He goes, I don't care about the noise. I don't care about this pollution, because all I care about is focusing on what is going to make me successful and what I need to do to stay positive every single day to move forward. The rest of it's just noise. And so the response was, I said, that's great, but you still need to focus on what's great for you. But you have to look at what's going on externally, because if you don't, that external influence eventually will impact you as an individual. You can't ignore it. We've seen that too many times in history where, you just allow things to happen. Eventually it impacts you. And so the same thing, regardless of where we're coming from. And I guess the reason why I sidetracked on this thought, getting back into the regulation perspective, we care about the digital currency space. We care about the growth of the blockchain technology space. We want to see it develop. We also want to see it develop in the right way. We don't want it to be constrained. We don't want to have a misunderstanding of what digital currencies are in the blockchain sense versus what a centralized digital currency is in the China sense, or the digital dollar sense that was they tried to pass through under Maxine Waters, tried to push through a digital dollar that had nothing to do whatsoever with digital currency as we know it. It was just something to quickly send money to people, basically another legacy system. And you can't have that kind of a framework. We have to be very cognizant. This is another reason why it's so important that people are observant of what is happening at the government level and doing it the right way, not doing it through burning stuff down and rioting, because that's not how you get your message across. That's not how you win friends or influence. You do it through the right mechanisms, and the right mechanisms are having open conversations, dialogue, and understanding the fundamentals that allow you to build up society, not break society down. You break society down, I guarantee you 100% everybody suffers. Nobody wins from a breakdown of society. And unfortunately, a lot of people out there don't understand the dynamics. We've seen it all over the world. You don't have to go too far, throughout the world. We've seen it in parts of the Middle East where they don't understand the dynamics of how they're being used from a mental perspective, but used as pawns in a bigger game, and it destroys those individuals' lives. Year after year after year after year, decade after decade, these individuals are living somebody else's means. Whereas they should be focused on how do we focus on building ourselves up, forget about everybody else. But at the same time, you have to have a voice and do things in a way that allow people, to get along in a better framework. But from a political perspective, the politicians and the governments understand very well how to manipulate the people through propaganda of the mainstream media. Now, what does all this have to do with cryptocurrency and digital asset, you ask? It has a lot to do with it, because that same mainstream propaganda message of the digital dollar or the digital yuan or the legacy platforms to try to undermine the cryptocurrency space and the blockchain spaces has been very real. And without the constituents of these representatives in Congress, without us going to them and saying, look, you don't understand the dynamics here of the blockchain space or the crypto space, thinking in the US. You need to get on board with this. We have individuals like Mike CRYTPO or Warren Davidson, like I mentioned, or Ted Budd or Darren Soto. There's a list of people that do get it and do understand, but the initiative has to come from the people. The people are the ones that have to look and say, okay, I'm getting ready to vote here in November. I'm going to look at my representatives. How many of my representatives actually understand the digital asset space, the real digital asset space? How many people am I voting for that are supporting economic freedom versus stifling economic growth and totalitarianism through government control. It's a very simple equation. You have to look at it from a very, very basic perspective. Forget about mainstream media. Forget about all the noise. You have to really do it for yourself and understand for yourself and do your own research. Shut off the TV, shut off mainstream media, shut off Twitter, and take a break. You have to clear the mind. And this is what's amazing. It boggles my mind because we have the tension of the Bitcoin maxis versus the XRP guys. You've got this one and that one. So much tension and chaos for what? What sense does it make to have someone great? Hey, you love Bitcoin. That's awesome. Hey, you know what? I love Bitcoin too. I think it's awesome. Okay, we agree. Now what? Now, why are you trying to convince me that if I like XRP and Ethereum and some others, why are you trying to convince me that that's bad? What do you have to gain as a Bitcoin lover for convincing me that I don't want these other assets? Do you want to show me that there's a hidden narrative in the dark web, that there's some company that has some ulterior motive of creating some asset that's being used for nefarious purposes? Hey, that's great. Tell me about that fact. But come to me with emotion and forget about it. I'm not going to have a conversation based on emotion. You want to come to a community, like what we're seeing right now in Kentucky. It's crazy. We have the Kentucky Derby, I guess, this weekend. And now you have people marching in the streets, different groups with their open carry and their guns. The one thing that people haven't, fully taken into consideration is what happens. What's the next agenda? What's the next step? Do we want to look at what happened in Lebanon or Syria or any of these other countries that have imploded on themselves? From a civil war perspective, it's crazy. If all these people spent as much time as they have been destroying property in creating property, do you think their lives would be better or worse? I mean, it's obvious, and so now we have in front of us all these individuals out there spending bad karma. They're using their voice and their actions towards bad things instead of good. And then again, you have to really look and say, okay, how many people, from this, perspective want to get along, and build towards, the right direction. I think that's the most, important perspective, is that regardless of what country you're in, regardless of what economic framework you find yourself in, everybody wants the same thing at the end of the day. And that's why, bringing all of this stuff in, why is it so important that we're having this conversation, about regulation and clarity and all of this? And why does it have to happen in 2020, or moving into 2021? Because it has to happen for the people. It has to happen for the betterment of society. That is, exactly what's critical. That's what we need to achieve. And so, so as you go through this, and you look at, Senator CRYTPO, or again, Warren Davidson and Darren Soto, they had HR 6154, which was interesting, which was introduced into Congress. According to a Forbes article in April, there were about 32 different crypto and blockchain bills that have been introduced into Congress. And that's amazing. First and foremost, there's been a group of bills that have been introduced in the use of cryptocurrency towards terrorism or money laundering or human and sex trafficking. And then they're looking at the framework. How do you react to cryptocurrency and blockchain? We saw what happened with Facebook with Libra. So and it's just been growing and growing and growing. So there was actually, let me see who direct. So Funky Fresh 707 actually shared this amazing link, and this is going on over in California. Now, again, if you can take all the political noise that's going on out there, stuff is still happening. Everything isn't isn't dire. Everything isn't melting down. People are still getting along. People are still working. People are still moving forward. You got to get above and beyond this. So even in California, there's still initiatives that are taking place. And I think this is great because you go onto the California government website, go to govops.ca.gov/blockchain, and they talk about the California Blockchain Working Group. I don't know when this started, but it's right there on their website. I mean, that's great. A blockchain working group. And as you go through it, it's kind of a who's who narrative. There's a ton of people that are in this space. So coming from the chair all the way down through, and then you have people there from Ripple Labs and everything. Some of these people come from a political background, or maybe they left, right, it doesn't matter at this point, because it's a blockchain working group initiative that shouldn't involve the politics of it and need to go to the economics of it in order to really push, for the betterment of all people. So it's really, really important. It's really critical. So it's unreal. So look at this, Analrag Shital. Great idea. In India, we have 1 million people in my village and 2 schools. I have so many opportunities. Man, I'll tell you what, over in in India, and India is difficult, and I've been to India 4 times, traveled. I've been in terms of regions that stand out: New Delhi, obviously, Chennai, Mumbai, Ahmedabad. I drove from Mumbai to Ahmedabad. It was like 7 hours. We stopped in another town that we had to go to. But man, to me, I look at a country like India. India to me is like the perfect example, of what we need to develop and build, because India, like you said, 1 million people. There's a lot of people in India, but there's a lot of bright people in India. There's a lot of growing opportunities in India. You start seeing the focus on building up the infrastructure. Can it happen fast enough? No. There's a lot of people. You have 1 million people in your village. There's still about 700 million people that live in poverty in India. 700 million people, twice the size of the United States, live in poverty. But you have 1.3 billion people in India. And David D said it is a sleeping giant. It's unbelievable. As you're starting to see industry and production and all of this moving outside of China, where do you think it's going to go? It's going to India. India has the brightest minds. To me, it's amazing. So do you have an opportunity in your village with 2 schools? I don't know. I mean, there's the internet. You're on here right now, learning on YouTube. Do you need a school necessarily to better yourself? I don't think so. I think it's been proven over and over and over and over again that those who succeed aren't necessarily educated with a college degree. I don't know. I have a master's in economics, but did that make me who I am, or have I learned even more after the fact when on just learning on my own? I studied Spanish on my own, and I found a teacher in Guatemala that I studied Spanish with, and I thought it was necessary. You have access to the internet. You can learn whatever the hell you want to learn. You can find whatever you want to find, but India is the place to look, because India is the place that's going to explode economically and be a superpower. It's just a matter of time. They have amazing products that are being indigenously made products in India that are state of the art. But people don't have that recognition. Why? Because everyone's focused on China. But what about India? India is different, because India won't necessarily, take advantage. India won't necessarily take advantage of their people overall. I believe, I firmly believe this, that they're looking for the betterment of their people. Unlike in China, where, they created these workshops and sweatshops and child labor and all these issues that go on over in China don't necessarily exist over. Was there a caste system in India? Yes. Was the caste system horrible? Yes. Does that still exist today? I'm sure it does. And have people overcome it? Yes. Have people in the lower caste in India become doctors and move to other countries? Yes. So the point is, it's inside the brain. It's inside, it's the individual. And that's where cryptocurrency and digital asset really allow us, as a world body, to overcome everything. So whatever discussion you want to have, you want to go back in history and discuss Columbus 400 years ago, whatever, you want to do that. I don't care. I mean, you can have that discussion from 400 years ago, because you know what? You can't stop at that point. You can't stop at Columbus. You have to go back further. If you want to look at the atrocities that have occurred in Africa over the years, you have to go there. You want to go back even further, and you want to go back 1,000 years, 2,000 years, you want to go back to the Roman Empire? Let's go back to the Roman Empire, because we don't live in history. We learn from history. If you want to live in history, you're going to have a warped sense of being, because you have to learn from history to make your present and your future better. You can't continuously rehash history, because if I had to rehash history, trust me, my mentality and my mindset would be a hell of a lot different. I have an entire family that I'll never know that were sent to gas chambers. How about that? How about that for recognition? I don't care about Columbus. I look at what happened in Germany not that long ago, but maybe you haven't studied that history either, of what went on in Germany and the millions of people that were massacred. So that's a reality. That's what we have to look out for. Now, if you would live in that history and that mindset, how are you ever going to overcome and build in your current state or in your future state? You'll never be able to do it, because your mindset is tied up in history that you have no control over it. You can't undo history. You can't redo history. You can learn from history for the betterment of all people. And that's the last that's my last point on that. You guys are awesome. I love all of you guys coming on here, everybody commenting here. Everybody's got some great feedback and comments, but the key here is the economic space, and exactly what we can accomplish, within the digital asset space, and growing for everybody all over the world. That's what's important. And that's what we're talking about here on the chain. That's what we talk about here on the Hodl Review. And that's why we drink the espresso, so we can keep this momentum going every Saturday. I got to go. I got to get to tennis. You guys are amazing. Awesome. Definitely come back. Anyone who's new here, hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you guys on the next one tomorrow night, 8 p.m. See ya. I am out of here. Let me see if I can find the out. I don't even know where it is. You guys are going to have to hang in here for a minute, because it's not here. It's not in it. There it is.
Are you down with OTC? Please like, subscribe, and click the bell to be notified when the next video drops.